Hey, ALSD. Welcome to today's webinar. It's great to be with you. I'm Jared Frank, publisher at the ALSD, and I'm privileged to be able to lead this constructive dialogue today, one that could take many paths, many layers, but we are going to be able to discuss fanless environments, perhaps even hybrid environments, and even permanent solutions as well, as we're now able to take an eye to the future, specifically around the themes of technology solutions and the significant revenue opportunities that come with those. We are not shooting from the hip today by any means. I don't want to give you that impression, but we have maybe a handful of slides that we'll show. Depends on the course of conversation. We are not programming a bank of questions on the back end of today. So we would encourage you to ask your questions as we go along, because we really want to serve you in the audience today as best we can. So ask those questions and we'll do our best to put you on the path to success. Guess that can wrap up the housekeeping notes for today. Let's meet the panel. Starting with Brett, can you please introduce yourself to the audience, a simple name, organization, and the lens through which you look at this topic today?
Hey, Jared. Thanks for allowing me to be on the panel today. Brett Unzicker. I'm a vice president at Samsung. I'm responsible at Samsung for live events, entertainment, and spectacular, so think sports. And so I look at it from the lens of really, we provide a lot of the solutions for revenue generation and have a lot of partners in the space. So thanks for the time.
Josh, talk to me. Name, organization, how you look at the topic.
Josh Kreitzler, one of the co-founders of Forefront. We're a sports and entertainment consultancy. We specialize in sponsorship sales, innovation, also known as strategic consulting, digital media, analytics and valuation, and now technology, especially through our partnership with Samsung. And the lens in which we really look at it is we are accountable to help our partners, most of them sort of in the league and team and property space, solve the challenges of both fan engagement and revenue generation. So I would add to that revenue retention in this day and age. So thanks for having us. And by the way, you remind us all that I have to up my background game based on the stockings and the TV and everything else. So that's the 2021 virtual mission, is to up the background game.
Thanks for that, Josh. It won't look quite as good here in a couple of weeks, but yes, we are embracing the season. Before we begin, I do need to share some news, and I want to thank Brett and Josh for providing me a couple minutes to do this. The association has lost one of our own, and many of you knew Greg Hylton, proud employee of the Indianapolis Colts for the past 23 years. Greg passed away late last week, losing his battle with cancer, but winning a place in our hearts all along the way. Greg was a true champion of the ALSD. He defined what sports hospitality is and should be, and I want to take a moment to celebrate him. He did mean so much to so many. He lived, guided by his strong faith and strong family, proud father to 2 daughters. He coached those girls' soccer teams all the way through the time when they went to college. And he continued to coach those teams even after they went to college, because he was so passionate about sport, the power of sport, believed in his community, and believed in his commitment to mentoring young people. He was also the president of the board of Sheltering Wings, which is a foundation, a shelter for victims of domestic violence. And it would mean a lot to the ALSD family if you would consider a donation in Greg's name to Sheltering Wings, shelteringwings.org. I will include that information in the webinar recap on ALSD.com. I guess I can even slide it into the chat function here today. But Greg Hylton defined positivity, optimism, serving others. His team tells me that he was even exchanging texts and emails about work all the way up through the night before he passed. And so we want to honor Greg today by doing our work. We're so fortunate to have this time together, this conversation together, this opportunity to get better together. So let's get to work. Brett, I'm going to ask you to start today and send the first question your way. And very broadly, just to get us started, what are some of those new opportunities that you're discussing with teams and venues currently?
Yeah, I think the opportunities really I'm discussing, or let me take a step back. I would say that as I talk to teams and organizations, I think everybody is really struggling with delivering assets to partners, without having fans in the stands, how they activate those assets. Every conversation that I have with somebody on the partnership side, I feel sorry for them. When I think that my job is a challenge, their job is a real challenge right now. And, they're doing, interesting things, whether it's, the cutouts of people in the stands or whether it's the tarps. But I think the thing that with Josh on as well, that we're really most interested in is the partnership that we've done together, where Forefront comes in and provides valuation services on where they can realize the greatest ROI for investments in a digital way. You mentioned not having slides. I do actually have a couple slides. I'll share them with you just so from a concept standpoint. Might help with the discussion. So what you're looking at here is a rendering of a venue, in this case, an MBA venue. And what we've done together with Forefront is Forefront will go in, and Josh can speak to this better than I can, but they will go in and actually look and do valuations of where these digital assets could be monetized in the best way to realize the obligation that teams have to their partners. In this case, you see 6 displays, 2 on the baseline, 2 on the sidelines, and 2 in the corners. And what that would look like here in a visual is shown here. We also can do it in a way, in a variety of different ways, modular, so we can extend it to go down the whole sideline. We're doing the same concepts right now with the NHL, having a lot of discussions with the league. And really energized about the opportunity here, because we realize each team and each league is a little different in terms of the needs. And I think that the partnership that with what Forefront brings to the table and what Samsung brings to the table is something that we've seen a lot of interest in this weird time where everybody's trying to not only generate revenue, but retain the revenue that they have.
Brett, lots to unpack there. Thanks for sharing those slides. That actually was really helpful. Josh, let's not bury the lead here. What is the value of some of these opportunities, and what is the ability to monetize some of those things that Brett just showed us?
Yeah, it's interesting because before we get into the revenue generation, it's what I said earlier and Brett reiterated is the revenue retention piece of it. And we've had so many conversations with people on the buy side, and yes, if you are a sponsorship seller, it has been a tough year. So the year is almost over. Vaccine is here. Help is on the way, but there's still work to do. And I was talking to somebody actually very recently, a friend of mine who's on the agency side, and he's been accountable for a lot of the renegotiation of existing deals. And he talked a lot about first of all, mutual to be determined assets, right? Everybody's trying to figure it out. And he said the challenge on the team side is the brands and the agencies have so much access and availability to data and information that the teams are really at a disadvantage when they're trying to renegotiate value for sort of soft assets, right? So hospitality, experiential, those type of things. And so, what we're trying to do in complement with Samsung is actually arm the teams, the leagues, the rights holders with valuations, analytics, ROI to basically prove first and foremost how you can deliver sort of tangible value. One other executive on the sales side who is responsible for a fairly large property said, so much of what we've always sold is the sizzle. And even for new partners, and when we get to take people through and walk them through and create this amazing experience, and there will never be a shortage of, passion selling, but in sort of the virtual COVID environment, you have to provide a little bit more stake and so some more tangible value. And so, exactly what we're trying to do in partnership with Samsung is create new tangible assets, especially those that are flexible and TV visible in a time which we're trying to remove Fanless from the equation and talk about even a hybrid scenario here, because everybody wants to be playing with fans in the stands, but do it in a way that arms the teams with information and evaluation. So what we're trying to do is, as opposed to think of it as a commoditized hardware sale, Samsung does incredible things, but supplement that with analytics around changing consumer behaviors and partner behaviors, arm them with a real tangible valuation, sort of pre and post an event and a season, so that they can use that first and foremost for revenue retention, but also use it as a new asset to take to market. Because as hard as this year has been, there is not a single sponsorship seller who is stopping selling, and there's not a single team owner who's saying, hey, you know what, whatever we have is great. Once the season starts, let's put this to bed. And so even from a tangible value is, how do you go find new partners and create new assets when assets are at a premium, because most of the things that you used to sell are frankly unavailable for the short to medium term.
Brett, I think that brings up a couple of areas that I think you can speak to. It's no secret that budgets are stretched. That puts it really nicely. So we're in this environment of cost containment, and I'm sure there's a cost associated with installing what you've described. Can you, even if it's broadly, discuss what those costs are and why it's still relevant for teams and venues to consider those costs, not just from that revenue retention standpoint that Josh brought up, but part two of my question is, this can scale. This can scale up or down depending on, does the virus get better? Do things actually turn in our favor, or do they get worse? In all cases in between, this solution can help and can help serve those needs of the teams and venues. So that was a little bit of word vomit. I apologize for that, but I guess in summary, two-part question: can you discuss costs and the ability of this technology to scale?
Yeah, I'll address both. And but first, I would say when looking at this, I think that everybody has an option, and I think there's an option to take action or an option to do nothing. And I will say very strongly that doing nothing is a horrible option. I repeat, is a horrible option. I think if you look at what's going on with this virus and how it's impacted sports, it's kind of analogous to how 9/11 impacted the airline industry. You used to have a paper ticket and walk up, maybe even with your family who wasn't even flying with you all the way to the gate. And you think about it now when we're doing things like retinal scans and, the airline industry completely changed. And that's what's going on right now in sports. People are sitting at home and they've gotten comfortable doing it. And there's some people are saying, hey, it's not that bad, but they all want to come back. But in the meantime, you do have to invest in technology and invest in ways to generate revenue. So your question in terms of, you said cost, I'm going to say investment. Not to sound like my attorney, but it depends. It depends upon what's your desired outcome with the activation. What state do you live in? Are you expecting fans to come back or not? And what's the size of the venue? But I would say, it can range from, a couple $100,000 to something more. But what we've done to answer the second part of your question is we've created options that some are fixed purchases. So if your venue is in a location where you're not expecting to have fans anytime soon, we have options for you to purchase. And then we also have options where, let's say you're predicting that you're not going to have any fans for the first month, but after that, you're expecting 25% occupancy or 50% occupancy. And we have the ability to do a rental where you can actually scale up the amount of displays you have for activations or scale down, depending upon what happens with this crazy virus environment that we live in. So I gave you an equal amount of word wall, but did I answer your question?
I think you did. And your vocabulary of investment was much more on point. So appreciate every good writer or webinar host needs a good person to edit them. So thank you. Let's stick with you, Brett. Turnaround time. How long does it take to install what you've described?
Yeah, not long at all. Depending upon what you're doing, but it could be anywhere from a few hours to half a day, maybe a full day, depending upon how much of this you're looking to do.
And your mock-ups displayed what an NBA, an NHL team could potentially do. And even within those leagues, and certainly across all the other segments of the ALSD, there are buildings of varying sizes, varying configurations, varying ages. Is this something that is just for newer venues? Is this something that existing venues can participate in? Ballparks, stadiums, colleges, minor leagues. Can you address, is this a universal solution or is it really better suited for certain segments?
No, I think it's really universal. I mean, and everybody's facing the problem. I think what Forefront and Samsung tried to do together was come up with a solution. And I think that we've come up with something that's very flexible, depending upon the use case. And then I think that the value that Forefront brings in terms of doing the analysis and the valuation as to here's where you should activate, here's where it might not make sense, or hey, here's your existing infrastructure and you could use this instead of renting something for 3 months. Like that's the service that we're offering as a partnership.
And to your point about new versus old buildings, it's interesting. We're having both pretty advanced conversations with some of the newest facilities in the country, and also some facilities that are probably overdue for upgrades. And I think the reasoning for wanting to do it is different. Is if you're a newer building, you probably have relatively new sponsor agreements, and so the expectations are high, and sort of the value give back is that you have to think about how do you sort of find new incremental value for them is really important, especially in those early years of the partnerships. And the older buildings, for the opposite reason, is there's limited existing inventory in which can provide value in the short to medium term because there might not be so much TV visible inventory. So you saw NBA and NHL mock-ups simply as a function of where we are seasonally, but it is not sort of dependent on those things. And, going back a little bit, we talked about sort of cost and investment. Let's be real. There is not a single team that has not had to make significant cost reductions and has probably ownership saying, reduce cost, reduce cost, reduce cost. And so that's not lost in terms of how we are contemplating this. But those same owners, when the season starts and they see some teams with new revenue generating opportunities, are going to be the ones who pick up the phone and say, why don't we have this? Why aren't we offering this to our partners? Why aren't we using this as new inventory to sell? And so we also spend a lot of time, on this in our sponsorship accountabilities, talking to that brand community, right? And the one thing that is also universal is budgets are being set on the brand side far later than they ever have, because of a wait and see attitude, right? If a brand typically had their budget for 2021 set in August or September, in some cases they still don't have them set because it's a bit of a wait and see attitude to see where and how they can spend money. And so there's also, this is not a scenario in which, well, if we don't have this in by opening day, we've missed the boat. The way we've scaled this is sort of technology when and how you need it for as long as you need it. And so if we're into January, into February, and there are new great sponsored partner discussions and there are teams saying, this is great, they want to do something for the second half of the season, or our existing partners want new ways to activate, it's sort of, it's not too late to do that because we are planning on installations prior to the start of season, which are happening, but also contemplating and have been told by teams, hey, we really like this. We're in negotiations with these 3 or 4 partners. If A, B, and C happens, we still want to do this, and it might not start till February, and that's totally understandable because, again, it's sort of new revenue against potential investment.
I want to talk a lot more about the brand side here momentarily, but first, Josh, going to put you on the spot a little bit. We've thrown out some terms, digital assets and hybrid experiences, and I think the slides did help, maybe even more than I anticipated. So I'm glad we did that. But sometimes people hear digital assets and I'm like, well, hey, that's cool, but I'm not really sure what that is. Hybrid experiences, wow, sounds pretty neat, but what are you talking about? Can you better illustrate that for the audience, what we're referring to when we're using those terms?
Yeah, it's interesting because we straddle digital in terms of the LED space and what we do with Samsung. And then we also have a digital marketing company in sort of the more traditional, mobile digital ad space. And so sometimes we'll be in meetings and be like, wait, which digital are we talking about here? And so I'll take that in 2 parts. The first part in terms of what we are doing with Samsung in digital, in terms of the dynamic TV visible LED in stadium. It's an amazing opportunity. And I think I've said it before, there's been 5+ years of innovation in the last 6+ months. And the idea that we have the opportunity as an industry to shift paradigms and create new opportunities that we didn't have before. And typically when you think about LED, so the beautiful screens that you see in bowl and in venue and on TV, so many of those were used for logo placements, right? To supplement the experience that is happening in venue. And in this time, there's the opportunity to sort of use this new technology, this new LED, to sort of recreate or supplement the in-game experience with TV visible signage from that couch experience. Because the reality is, I live in Chicago, and we are going to be fanless for some time. And that might be a different scenario in southern states or warmer weather states, all TBD. But I think the idea here that we can use this LED and those digital boards, not just for logo placement, which still has value and creates tangible impressions, it can be measured, but also more messaging and experience and at-home games and the donut races and the guess where the ball is under the hat contest that I would normally only experience when I'm in the venue. So the second half of that is digital in terms of how do you supplement the experience in venue with digital and mobile and create that as a sponsorable element. And frankly, I think that's where some of the other largest opportunity is for teams and leagues is to think digital in that respect first, right? I've talked to a lot of colleagues and friends who work in what would I call traditional like ad sales jobs, people who work for Facebook and Pinterest and Snapchat. They're crushing it right now. It's kind of irritating to talk to them, frankly, because they've had like really great years. And so as a function of that's where brands can reach consumers, a lot of that money is going to there. So if I'm any team anywhere, I want to figure out how I can not only retain but capture some of those digital dollars, because the reality is the passion and the avidity of the team, the fans of the teams are some of the most valuable assets. So how do you harness that? And I did expect this question. So if Max is somewhere in the background, we do have one slide, because I wanted to share one example of something we're doing when you think of digital in the sort of the digital and mobile sense that we do for the Chicago Bears. And we do this for a lot of teams. And I think, what typically we're thought of is sort of digital as throw-ins, right? As you get some content or banner ads or 30-second pre-roll on our homepage. I really like what the Bears do and what this illustrates, how this can sort of generate revenue, not only in this time, but should be part of every media mix that sponsorship sellers are selling at this point. So what this is this is what we've created as the Bears Fan Network, which is essentially just a white label solution that Forefront provides in the background and aggregates all of the Bears fans' first-party data. And what we're also doing is then appending other third-party data, finding like-minded Bears fans who might not have visited bears.com, in which we can serve any message, anytime to any audience when appropriate. And so this particular example is for Bob's Furniture, which is a Bears sponsor. And the reality is Bob's Furniture wants to sell furniture not only when the Bears are playing football, but they want to sell furniture in July when traffic on bears.com is going to be, realistically less than it would be in season. And so now what the Bears are doing is bundling into their sponsorship deals is a certain guaranteed amount of impressions to the Bears Fan Network. And so what we are doing is we are serving pieces of content, mobile ads, joint branded content, and that would appear on your desktop, that would appear on your mobile, wherever those Bears fans are. And it's a revenue generator for the Bears. The way it works is we are out in market in real time buying those ad placements, but it's a wholesale retail model. So essentially the Bears have a fairly significant margin in there where that's incremental revenue they wouldn't otherwise have as part of their sponsorship deals. Very easy to do, very easy to set up. And frankly, especially in these times, to sort of have predictive guaranteed impression counts to sort of first party passionate audiences to supplement what's happening in venue and on broadcast is something, frankly, I feel fairly strongly everybody should be thinking about.
Brett, I promise we'll get back to you quickly, but one more question for you, Josh, and I think we can do this quickly. Most of us, certainly most of us in marketing roles, understand what programmatic is at this point, but for anyone in the audience who doesn't sit close to marketing in their day-to-day role, can can you just briefly explain what programmatic advertising is, how it works?
Yes, I will go fast. But essentially, back in the day, early in digital, if I wanted to reach a male 18 to 34, I would buy ESPN.com because that's a proxy audience for a male 18 to 34. Fast forward, then you could buy ad networks, right? So I could buy Deadspin and Barstool as a more efficient way to do that. And what programmatic essentially came into being was ad inventory online is perishable. If it's not seen in real time, it's gone. And so everybody sort of made available all of their inventory into these ad exchanges. And so as opposed to buying audiences, I can buy individuals in real time based on a certain predetermined criteria thousands of times per second. So as opposed to wanting to reach a male 18 to 34, I want to reach Jared because I know he's going to buy, Axe body spray and he's a Bears fan. And so if he happens to
whoa. Axe body spray is the best example you can come up with.
Ever. I probably need to update that one. That I don't know if that was relevant. We did it campaigns for them, so that's always stuck in my brain. But so when you have your Axe body spray, you can thank us because we served you an ad because you watched the Bears game. But programmatic is essentially sort of capturing that data. So if you've ever gone to Amazon, you almost buy a pair of shoes and then you don't, and then you start to see those pair of shoes everywhere you seem to go. That is empty cart retargeting, which is sort of the lowest piece of the funnel. So we do that, but we also sort of create, top of the funnel opportunities where it's not only somebody who, Jared, you visited bears.com, so you're in our network, but who shares 10 of your attributes, your same demographics, psychographics, that you are a more likely buyer as well. So we do this not only for sponsor messaging, we do it to help teams with TV tune-in. We're helping the Minnesota Wild right now with merch sales around the holidays. So it's applicable in a whole lot of ways to a whole lot of people on the team side. Sorry for the Axe body spray example on that one.
No worries. Just for the record, for the audience, I've never used Axe body spray. I appreciate you thinking that I'm a few years younger and in the prime demographic for Axe body spray, but happily married and don't.
I think you were just saying you smell, Jared. That was the gist of it. It wasn't anything about your youth.
Gents, let's pivot as we're getting down closer to the end here. And like we said off the top and reiterated a couple of times, we don't just exclusively want to talk about Fanless. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic and excited about opportunities in 2021 with some level of capacity of fans. We already see it in some facilities. And Brett, you're in a unique position to talk about what fan expectations are, what their appetite is to come back. Samsung conducted a survey. We resent that to our audience via email today. So anyone listening to this webinar, please revisit your email, revisit that survey. Lots of good information in there. Can you give us the high points of what the research was and what some of the notable findings are?
Yeah, I took some notes here down on a piece of paper so I can remember the stats. But first of all, I want to say, while we do talk about Fanless, Josh and I, as sports fans, it's not just we make our livelihood here as sports fans. We always talk about when can we get back to a game. So thank you for changing the conversation here to that. I was actually really encouraged by the survey. So the criteria was you had to have attended at least one live event last year. And it was the encouraging parts of the survey I found were 74% of people believe that we will be back within a year, or that they will be back within a year, with 33% saying within 6 months. So I know I would go back tomorrow if I could, but I think that's pretty encouraging. Some interesting points. People said that the two things that they're most excited about when it comes to live events are the people and the excitement of the event. That ranked above score, the team, the musician, and food. So I know Josh is a big fan of the hot dogs at venues, but most people are more excited about being there with other people and excitement than food or the teams, which is kind of ironic in that this virus spreads with people, but people are more excited about being there with others. But on the flip side of that coin, 56% of people said that they would feel unsafe without COVID-19 safety measures in place. The places that they wanted to have measures in place were in their seats and in the bathrooms, with 74% saying they wanted strict sanitizing and 74% saying reduced capacity. So I think the bottom line was everybody believes we're coming back, but at a bare minimum, if you're running a venue, you really need to look at sanitizing and how you're going to handle social distancing, at least right out of the gate.
Josh, same question to you, but for brands. You're very close to the pulse, speaking with a number of these brands. What are their expectations as we're turning the calendar to 2021?
Yeah, I think, the folks on the brand side are equally fans, and so their expectation and hope, not expectation, but hope is, that there will be some hybrid, but I think everybody is sort of planning conservatively that there's not. And, I don't know that necessarily, other than the hospitality aspect, that the brand community wants, anything other than they've always wanted is great return on objectives and return on investment. And, that still lives with great storytelling. And it really, it lives with, integrated content and how are you creating authentic relationships. And the one thing I will say, and I should give examples of each of these, but the other piece of it that I think will be a little bit different in 2021 is also diversity and inclusion as part of any team or league and how they are authentically sort of working with the communities that they share. And I'll give an example of each of that because I think it's relevant. So, on the content integration piece of it, we did a deal, huge credit to Brian Millman at Evil Geniuses, a deal with Motorola on the rollout of their Edge Plus phone. And it was all about content integration. All of the athletes are virtual. Gaming is still happening, but it wasn't happening sort of in the large arena type settings. And so all of the athletes are gaming virtually. And so the ability to record content and send messages all done through that Motorola Edge phone, that was a really authentic content integration that the brand did to sort of figure out like, okay, we still have to sell phones. We want it to be authentic to this audience. NEG did a really good job of sort of creating a platform in which they could do that. From a storytelling perspective, the example I turn to is minor league baseball. Dave Wright, who has recently moved on back to the soccer world. Minor league baseball did not have a season, and Dave sort of challenged us to say, where is the opportunity in the challenge? And through his guidance, we came up with hashtag MILB at home opener, and sort of created a virtual at home sort of complete day of events. So in the morning, it was mascots doing stretching with fans across the country, and each team sort of sharing authentic recipes, during the afternoon. And frankly, it was the biggest social engagement they ever did and was trending on Twitter. And the idea that the biggest social engagement they ever did happened in the year where they did not play baseball is astounding. And frankly, you have to be optimistic about how you can build on that when you're actually playing again. And from the diversity and inclusion standpoint, huge shout out to Jessica Smith at Angel City FC. They just did one of their founding partnership deals with Heineken, and 10% of that sponsorship investment is put back into the community with a focus on LGBTQ initiatives. And so, it's sort of, they're not talking about it, they're actioning that. And I think that's going to be, not the exception, but the rule moving forward in 2021.
All excellent points. The stories being told now are certainly different than they were 9, 10 months ago. And in some cases, the brands telling those stories are different. So what are some of those new or emerging business categories or brand categories that are better prospective candidates for partnerships with teams in a COVID world? What are some of those categories that unfortunately have taken a step back because their businesses have been hurt in the last 9, 10 months?
I'll focus a little bit on the emerging and the growing categories, because I think there can always be a case made that even the industries or the verticals that are retracting is almost a bigger reason to market, right, for market share. But I'll drop a couple stats on you. These are not memorized stats, but I thought they were really interesting. Online shopping is up 51% year over year. And to benchmark that, it was up 19% the year prior. So these are all intuitive, but it's a good reminder for anybody who's in the sponsorship sales game of picking up the phone. Home furniture purchases are up 44% year over year online. My wife works in our bedroom. I'm like, dude, do you want a desk or something? And she still works just like sitting on the bed and for the foreseeable future. 92% increase in home improvement supplies. Everybody's getting back to all the things that they've sort of avoided doing for so long because they're in their house as much as they are. 70% increase for online receipts for pet food, pet supplies, and pet toys. We did not, because we are at animal capacity, but I'm sure everybody has, if not themselves, a friend who has a new dog or cat over a new COVID pet. And so pet supplies is an amazing and growing category. And the last one, which I'm actually talking to you from this makeshift room, 122% increase for online receipts for home gym equipment and fitness equipment. And so I guess the loser on that side is your local gym. But as people are, getting comfortable living at home, they're also exercising at home. And if you try to go on dicksportinggoods.com and order anything related to home fitness, it's a 6-month wait. So I think those are all categories that you'll continue to see into the first half of 2020 do really well.
And they're constantly evolving, right? In 6 months and in 12 months, those categories are going to be changed again. So we'll have to have you back on to talk about those. We are essentially at time. So Brett, I want to give you the last word on this discussion here today. Do you have any closing thoughts on CapEx investments, not costs, investments that the teams and venues in the audience should be considering? And again, not just to apply a Band-Aid for the here and now, but really to propel the industry forward into 2021 and beyond.
Yeah, I think at a high level, I would say that if you, we're all sports fans, right? And if you acknowledge that this virus has impacted what we love, and if you work in this industry, you almost have an obligation to make these investments for the future. I would say you need to make these investments in, first and foremost, safety, so that people will come back. I think secondly, investments to enhance the experience. I would say investments to understand your fans more around the data that Josh talked about. And, if you do these things, I think those investments then turn into revenue and realizing that revenue that everybody needs to come back.
That's great. That's a great punctuation for today. There's a lot more that we could have got to, a lot more layers to this onion. So if anyone in the audience would like to get in touch with you to continue the conversation, Brett, is there a best way for them to contact you or someone on your team to have that conversation?
Yeah, I will put my email and phone number in the chat, or I'm happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn and connect there. My name Brett. Last name is Unzicker, Unzicker.
And Josh, same question. How can the audience contact you to continue the conversation?
Any of those ways. I'm literally always here, so you know what. So Josh at teamforefront.com, and I'll put that up. Cell phone and LinkedIn is also great.
Love it. Well, thank you to you both. Thank you to the audience. Have a great last night of Hanukkah. Have a Merry Christmas next week. Happy New Year, however you celebrate, however you are able to come together, whatever cookies you're able to eat this year. Please do it safely, and please be safe, be kind, and we'll see you next time in 2021.